How to deal with toxic relationships and codependency. I think first of all you have to deal with yourself. I think reading books about psychology from psychologists and learning spirituality all helps you understand things and understand dynamics. I mean, ultimately, the reason that we get into toxic relationships is because we forget who we are, and then both parties are seeking from each other, which is really hardcore to seek love from another person. But that's not a loving thing. Like, that's like greed. It's like you're taking from the other person. So that's the main issue. And then on top of that, we can like work up the layers or work down the layers of what then happens. And then also even so there can be that layer, but then also even if the identity collapses or there's a seeing through of the illusion, everybody's going to have particular patterns and behaviors, and you've always got to have an openness and no arrogance to always expanding and improving your behaviors for the sake of everybody else. We as humans, we've got particular ways about us, and I think one of the worst qualities of humans is narrow-mindedness and closedness. So either with this subject or not, there's always like openness to improving the freaking characters for the sake of humanity, for your neighbors, for your family. Everyone could be humble to being humble enough to admit they can be annoying, they could be selfish, they could be too loud when other people need quietness, all these different things. But that's a different element. So let's get into why relationships get toxic. So first of all, I want to make a confession, because I feel like I don't want to allow anyone to project onto me any falseness. Hopefully, if you listen to these talks regularly, you realize that I always try to be as honest as possible without exposing people that don't want to be exposed on the internet. But since I've been teaching, I've had toxic relationships with people, predominantly out of my own ignorance, obviously. And also because there was a dynamic in me that needed to heal, and so life gave that to me. And the toxic relationship formed in, I think it's what you call toxic relationship. I think that the other person lied a lot, and I didn't really realize. I had an intuition that was happening, but in my brain I just thought, oh, it's just projection or old past traumas of the body mind. Like when you're a woman, sometimes I think, and men can have this too, but sometimes we may have accused our partner of lying a lot of times, and so we have this if you've been into spirituality for a while, you have this openness to giving the benefit of the doubt. So I did actually intuitively feel that the lying was happening, and I did confront it, but when they denied it, I gave them the benefit of the doubt and thought they were evolved enough to not be lying. So there was so to me, I played equally a part in that as the other partner. Like nobody's ever a victim, and my part was not trusting my intuition through spiritual conditioning, like taking too much responsibility on myself, thinking, oh no, it's my issues. And and not trusting intuition. And that was a really amazing lesson for me to learn. And I'm open that it can happen again. Like, we can all form relationships with people, whether it be boss or co-worker, and be taken advantage of. And I feel that I also attracted it to me because I was open to healing that part of me. So I was open to growing and gaining more confidence and being more confident in what I felt and my own intuition and my own ability to have telepathic feelings or thoughts. I think we all have it, but we often don't trust it. So I feel like I attracted that situation because I was open to healing that. And often we heal things through difficult situations like that. So if we've got a trauma inside of us, we bring towards ourselves in the manifest level, and it's like an invitation to heal yourself from that. So to heal yourself from deception. And if you're open enough, and if your heart's open, then you'll take that as something to be grateful for. And I really grew from that. It was really humbling, because there I was doing talks and talking about non-duality, and then I was totally full-blown cons. Yeah, so and then I think another part is that when you have this, you open up and you have like this naivety again, like a child, like this openness, like wow, wow, wow. And it's like learning to have that childlikeness, but also have the maturity of an adult, so you're not freaking stupid. Like, I was so stupid, I even signed contracts in a different language. I mean, I've done that here in France, but I had a professional translator. I did it without even a translator. Like, I was like, you can just trust. Like, that was a very spiritual, hippie idea. So it's like learning to hold those two different things. And it really expanded me and helped me, that situation. And it's, and I think it's still, even now, this is years after, like something I process every so often, because it was such a strong habit of mine when I was younger and through growing up, to not trust myself and to not trust my feelings and my thoughts and my ideas and not have conviction in it. And part of like I found now having healthy boundaries and healthy relationships is like distinguishing what you think and what you feel. And you can explore that with your friend, with your partner, with your lover. So you can say it and you can explore it and be open to their side of the story, but also having this deep trust and faith in yourself and not looking for the other to confirm what you feel. Like, often when I'm in disagreement with my partner, or I listen to disagreements from friends or from people, we're often looking for our partner to validate what we feel, or for our friend or our parent to say, yes, that's okay what you feel, and yes, I get what you feel, and yes, you are right. And we're often looking for that. And when you look for that, you make yourself in a way vulnerable to deception. Like, you have to go in open to listening to other people and open to changing your mind, but also conviction in what you say, like not being swayed if that's what you really believe and it comes from a genuine, loving, open space. And not letting somebody's anger or annoyance or like, but you did this, you did that. Like, suddenly like, yes, I'm terrible, I've done something wrong. Like, just like being grounded in what you perceive or to be right, but from a nice feeling. If you're in like lots of torment and anguish and discomfort, then it's more than likely your view is there's something up. It could be just that you're being challenged, or it could be that so it could be like the fear of confrontation, which is making that discomfort, but it could also be that your projection or your thoughts or your feelings aren't that grounded. And then the other truth is, when you're in discussion or you're having troubles in a relationship, the other reality is there is no truth. So often when you're in an argument or disagreement, or when you're having a lot of conflict, you're both looking for some form of truth. And there is no truth. And just being open to accept the vulnerability and the rawness of it. There isn't really a right and wrong. Obviously, if somebody's stolen from you or kicked you or hit you in the face, then you can say that's right and that's wrong. But on the ultimate level, it is as it is. It's unnameable. Life is unnameable. We used and we made up words in order to name things. So you can say, like, someone smashes into your car, you did that and it's your insurance. But then it's also like, really, on the ultimate level, God did that. It wasn't the individual. The individual is a puppet of the divine, and who knows why the divine did that. It's like the movement of a butterfly on one side of the world needs to be there in order for all the other things on the other side of the world to happen, like this perfect balance. So we can't really distinguish why things happen. That doesn't mean that you don't have that humility and humbleness to apologize and to take apparent responsibility. It's just deep down on a deep level, you know that this is all mystery and it just doesn't make sense. So often when I see people going into arguments, and when I work with couples, which sometimes happens, what they're seeking for is the other to validate what they feel. I know that's, even now, that's something, you know, you look for the other person to go, yeah, I can see that, I can understand that. And that's really beautiful if somebody can be open to seeing it from your way. But you've got to understand that not humans will, they've not got time, they've not got patience, they've got the right emotional attitude, and they might not do it. And if that kicks you off and sends you off into an emotional turmoil, you've just got to stay with that rather than trying to force the other one and keep arguing to get the other one to say something or release an emotion in you to feel more grounded. I think that something that's really helpful when two people are arguing, or when I argue with somebody, is looking at, what is it that I really want here? Like, what is it that I want? And really what we all want on the deepest level is just intimacy and connection with the other, like on the human level. Like on the absolute level you always are, but on the human level we also want that. And we might have perceived the other action as like pushing you away or disrespectful, whatever it is. And you're allowed to say your piece and what you feel, but you can't expect the other to validate that. And you get all different types of personalities. Like, from all my dating experience, which maybe, I don't know, it's relative, it's maybe a lot, maybe not a lot. I think I've had like 4 or 5, maybe 3 or 4 like significant relationships, you know, like partner relationships, lover relationships. And out of those, you know, you get different personality types. Like, you get personality types that have a lot of empathy and therefore can really understand your point quickly, so they can, and they think about your feelings and they think about how things make you feel. And to me, that's wonderful. Like, I'm an empath, so being with another empath is really wonderful because, you know, if you say something and if you bring something up, then they really reflect on how that makes you feel. And they're open to the way you feel, and they're open to looking at it from lots of different angles, and they're open to changing as well. They're humble to changing. But if you're with a character that has less empath, so you've got like a scale, so someone that's got less empathy, so more of a leader type, a boss character, they're more like the sort of character that, right, very seriously goes after what they want. They're not thinking about consequences or other people's feelings, and they're not bad, they're just part of what have evolved from this beautiful, crazy, messy thing called humanity. And if you have like a character that has less empathy, then they're not going to be so understanding of what you feel and what you think, and recognizing that as well. Like, so they're not going to have such an open mind, and they'll be more concerned about you feeling and thinking in a way that suits the way they feel and think. So rather than there being more interested in what you actually feel and think, it's more about it suiting them, because they're very want and goal orientated. It's about that, you matching up with that. And you just have to be realistic. So sometimes you're with relationships. I know I've had a relationship with people that are less empathy, and I've wanted to push them into understanding me, or push them into like understanding that if they act in a certain way, it's hurtful. And I kind of realized after the second time I did that in a relationship that they're not designed to do that, and there's no point battling it. But I realized that I had those types of relationships with men in order to learn that, like in order to understand these different personality types. And a lot of the time when I was in those relationships, when we argued, it was about me convincing them that my feelings were valid, or that they had to think about my feelings or think about it, how it made me feel. And then their game would be to try and talk me out and see if it was projection, or it wasn't right, or it was irrelevant. And sometimes just when you have a discussion with people, you don't even need anything to happen, you just need to be heard. So just recognizing all these things in you and in the other, and recognizing psychology and the way that we work. And I think that this wanting thing, so this is what I teach a lot, is really important. What is it the character wants? Like understanding what is it you want. So when you go to confront someone, or you go to bring up energies or dynamics, like what is it that you want to get out of that? You want emotional release. None of it's bad. You want to convince the other to change their behavior, but understanding what you're going in there with. Because if you want to just argue, then that's what you're going to attract. If you want to punish the other, then that's what you're going to attract. If you want to be right over the other, trust me, that's what you're going to attract, and you're going to attract this happening. Like, so what is your want? Like attracts like. So if you go there with an argumentative mindset, or wanting to prove they're wrong, they'll come back at you like wanting to prove you wrong. If you go there with an open heart, wanting to express your feelings and wanting to be heard, then as long as they're that type of character, then that should work. Just be aware when they've not got empathy, that's not going to work. I used to think that all characters had the possibility for empathy, but that was ignorance. It's almost like they're two different species, sometimes think, like with empathy and without empathy, because that's a completely different way of, because the one without empathy is very, very fixated on what it wants, which in a way is good, because the empath can be in a pain in the butt and emotional disharmony because it never really understands what it wants. So it like latches onto other people's wants, or it creates all these dramas because it doesn't understand what it wants. And but the one that's like really driven, the one that's not got empathy and really driven to get what it wants, it does things regardless of other people's feelings. The wants are way more important than other people's feelings. In fact, other people's feelings are irrelevant. It's just not in the non-empath's ability to think about other people's feelings like that. And if that's taken to the absolute extreme, that's what's a psychopath or a sociopath in our society. And then you get people who are in the middle that have a little bit of empathy and then not much. And then you get really strong empaths. And really strong empaths can be a real pain in the butt, because they can, like, not always pro-empath. Real strong empaths can be very unclear about what they want. And because they've been misunderstood a lot, they can be very much always trying to get people to validate and understand what they feel or think, and they need to go back in more to themselves. So you've got these different dynamics, but I do think that these two different types are almost like a different species in a way. Like it's very different having empathy to not having empathy. And the ones that don't have empathy, I've tried, cannot get empathy. The ones that are in the middle can, but if you've not got any empathy at all, they cannot get this about other people's feelings. So even if somebody is like ready to kill themselves and in so much an emotional agony, the one without empathy cannot relate to that. It still is about whether or not that suits their emotional needs and wants. So say if you've got disharmony within partnership and it's like something that you're doing, so the one without empathy is doing a behavior that's really killing the empath one, and the empath one keeps trying to get this one to understand, what you're doing is really, really hurting me. This one will never, ever understand. This one will always try to talk the empath out of its feelings, always try to talk the empath out of its feelings, because this one is about action and getting what it wants. And this one, by being crushed by what this one does not suit this one. So this one will always try to talk this one out of it. And it cannot have empathy. And this one will kill itself trying to get that one to understand it. But it's like, that's like the trauma of the empath. If the empath can see that, then the empath will begin to shine and open up. That this one isn't going to save you. That this one isn't going to suddenly turn around and be like, oh, I get what you're feeling. I get that I'm being an asshole. I'm so sorry. Come and stand with me and we'll take hands and we'll walk together. It's never going to happen. And the empath will die if it keeps waiting for that one. Will be crushed. I had that possibility in relationships, and thankfully I saw it. I saw that game. I think that's so common in relationships, that game. And the funny thing is the one without empathy will be listening to this and think it has empathy. It doesn't know. So the one without empathy will never realize. So everybody will be thinking that they're the empath here, that they'll be this one. No one will be thinking they're the one without empathy because they can't perceive it. If you're a boss character, then it's more than likely, like, I mean, when I say a boss character, like somebody that wants to be the leader, that wants to set something up, that wants to, it's always the leader and designing things and very focused on what it wants, is always hunting, but not a predator necessarily. It can become a predator if not checked, but like very focused. And it's more than likely you can do that because there is not this strong empathy. If there's strong empathy, then you can't just go on what you want. Part of what you want is to make sure that everybody else around you is loved and cared for, and that you do it in a conscientious way. It's the way it is. So if you're a really strong hunter, everyone's sitting there like, no, I'm definitely the empath, except the really strong empaths will be like, maybe I'm the predator. That's the only ones that will question it, because it's the nature of the empath. So the ones that are now questioning it are more than likely the empath, because the empath does that. It's always like, that's the great thing about the empath. The empath can be very emotionally unbalanced, but the great thing about the empath is it's always open to imagining it could be a different way, or how other people feel, or what it could be. Like, it's not so fixed on its identity. Yeah. So I don't know if that helped you. Thank you for your sincerity.